This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Cast out your vengeance. Tonight, we have seen the birth of the planet of the apes.
Hello, this is Tom Burman. I'm here with Talking Apes, and I was John Chambers' assistant on the very first Planet of the Apes, and as well as Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and I started the Escape from Planet of the Apes, but then I escaped. I'm Tom Burman, and you're listening to Talking Apes.
This is Lou Wagner, and you're listening to Talking Apes.
Hello to all you chimps, gorillas, orangutans, and even you damn dirty humanoids. I am Richard Woloski, and I want to welcome you once again to Talking Apes. We've met a lot of new ape fans in the last few months, so if you are just joining us now, well, let me catch you up. This is our spin-off podcast from Talking Apes TV, where we recapped and broke down each episode of the live-action and animated Planet of the Apes TV series. But since there are no more TV shows to discuss and argue over, we are now branching off and talking with authors, actors, and others in the ape fan community. But before we get into this episode, and another apology, let me introduce my co-host and fellow ape, Marco Gushewitz. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rich. Now here comes the apology right up front. Let's not even waste any time, but I know we said on our last two episodes that we were going to cover the Planet of the Apes 50th anniversary screening and all the events that were held during USC's Visions and Voices program. And trust me, I promise you, we will. But recently, we had such an absolutely amazing time at Monsterpalooza, which was held in Pasadena over the April 13th to 15th weekend. And we got so much great stuff that we just couldn't wait to share it. But we do promise coverage of the event at USC. I promise it's coming. I promise. Do you promise, Richard, please?
I do promise. I do promise. And if it wasn't for Monsterpalooza, we would be doing that right now. But oh my goodness, the stuff that we got for you apes is just mind-blowing. But Mark, before we go there, let's talk about this new book called Talking Apes.
Wait, we have a book?
Yeah, you know what? That's what I thought. And one morning I woke up to a Facebook call out from our good friend Patrick Izzo, who said, "Talking Apes, is this you guys?" And I'm looking at it and I thought it was photoshopped, but no, it's a real book called Talking Apes. And now what this book documents are those first makeup tests done back in 1966, where Charlton Heston played off of Edward G. Robinson, who was playing Dr. Zaius.
Right.
Now, Fox wasn't sold about the idea at first, as we all know about this ape movie. Mm-hmm. So Arthur P. Jacobson, the producer, he shot a scene so those suits over there at Fox could see how the makeup played on film. Right. And honestly, if I were a president at Fox, I'm not sure I'd be sold on this film, judging by those first makeup tests.
Right.
But hey, luckily it all worked out, and 50 years later, we're still talking about Planet of the Apes. This Talking Apes book was written by Solo Adami, and it also goes into the history of Rod Serling's script and the Moore Abrahams adaptation. It also covers Ben Nye's makeup to these first makeup screen tests. Mm-hmm. If you're interested, go on over there to Amazon and just type in Talking Apes and it'll pop right up.
Once again, and we do this quite a bit, we got to thank Patrick Izzo for, making us aware of this, because now we have a book that we can go to that, I guess, documents it.
I really thought that Angela Rushmere had photoshopped this, even using our same title font. Now, I know the name Talking Apes does work on many different levels, and let's just face it, it is a fantastic name. Mm-hmm. But Mark, speaking of the name Talking Apes, have you ever noticed that those words, Talking Apes, are said in the film Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Now, when I just saw the screening at USC, I heard it in the dialogue again and again and again. In fact, I kept nudging the guy next to me whenever Talking Apes was mentioned in Conquest. And hey, guess who that guy was that I was nudging repeatedly?
I have no idea.
The guy I was nudging repeatedly was none other than Governor Breck himself, Don Murray. Here we are watching him in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and he's also sitting right next to me, being nudged repeatedly.
And did he say to you, yeah, they did that because of the podcast?
That's exactly what he said. Now, honestly, Max was with me, Max Cervantes, and I thought he was on the other side of me, so when I was nudging Don, I thought I was nudging Max. So, Don, if you're listening, I apologize for the big bruise on your arm. But I was so excited that they kept mentioning Talking Apes. Now, Mark, guess how many times Talking Apes is mentioned in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes?
Well, if you're bringing it up, I'm going to guess it was more than 1.
Keep going.
2.
Keep on going.
3.
Keep on going.
4.
Now double that.
8.
And subtract 1.
7.
7 times.
That was my first guess. I swear, I was just playing along.
If you want some auditory proof of this, well, check it out. Here they all are every time that Talking Apes or even Talking Ape was mentioned in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Now listen to me, Caesar. There can be only one talking chimpanzee on Earth. The child of the 2 talking apes, Cornelius and Zira. He's a performing ape for my circus.
A talking ape?
From 20 years back. From the year, Senor Nando, when the 2 talking apes arrived on Earth.
And we believe that the male and female talking apes, Cornelius and Zira, have come to us out of the future.
A month before the talking apes arrived on Earth.
Very well, Mr. McDonald. Your protest has been duly noted. From now on, you have but one assignment: to find that talking ape.
That idiot!
This chimpanzee...
Get out of retraction immediately. Announce that the talking ape has been apprehended and put to death.
Mark, I guess they were trying to subliminally tell us at the age of 3 that we in our lives have got to do a podcast called Talking Apes.
You know, something happened to me that I didn't tell you about, and it was right after you came to me with the idea for Talking Apes TV, and we didn't have a title or anything yet. It was just, hey, let's do a podcast on the live-action TV show. Well, I could have swore that every night I was dreaming, I was hearing some mysterious voice from the past in my dreams going, Talking Apes, Talking Apes. I bet you that was them.
No, that was me. That's why I tell you, never leave your front door unlocked.
Oh my God, now I know.
So thank you very much to J. Lee Thompson for putting that bug in our ears when, 1972, I was 3 years old. So it goes way back to that. All right, now, Mark, with that, let's jump into our Monsterpalooza highlights, where we got some great interviews with Lou Wagner, who plays Lucius in Planet of the Apes. We also talked with David Naughton, who I just could not wait to talk with him. And Mark, tell everyone who David Naughton is and his connection to Planet of the Apes.
Well, he was the brother of James Naughton, who played Pete in the live-action television series. And he also had a walk-on role on one of the episodes of that live-action TV series.
Yeah, he played Dr. Stoll in the episode The Surgeon. Lots of great stuff there. We also talked with the Los Angeles Ape City Costume Group, makeup legend Tom Burman, and the Making Apes director William Conlin.
And a surprise reunion that will appear at the end of the show. It's not necessarily apes related, but it does have a connection with one of our new friends who is definitely knee-deep in the ape world.
And this reunion was the first time these two actors had seen each other since filming the movie they appeared in 1982. That excited me to no end. Yeah, I had a big fascination with this movie. You just might want to take out any children who might be in the room. All right, with that, Mark, let's talk about Monsterpalooza and the highlights. Now, for you, what was one of your big highlights for this year's Monsterpalooza?
I would just want to say that Monsterpalooza in itself is a highlight for me because I love going to Monsterpalooza, and I've been going since the days when there weren't any lines because very few people knew it existed. And over the years, it grew and grew and grew, and now we got huge lines that we had to get there really early to get into. And this is actually a really, really great convention if people haven't gone. It centers itself all in horror and sci-fi, and a lot of actors to meet, a lot of people there. The Making Apes people were there this year, but also the showroom isn't your typical showroom. Like when you go to Comic-Con, you go into the showroom and they're just selling a bunch of stuff, and a lot of the tables have the same thing. Whereas in Monsterpalooza, you go to all the tables and everything's something different. It's people showing off sculptures that they've designed and paintings that they've done, and all this stuff's for sale, but a lot of it's original artwork. And it's just, to me, really cool. And I also love the fact that horror, a genre that's not really well respected, has a convention like this that you go to and you just see all these people, paying their respects to a genre that I personally love.
And it's amazing to see the love for monster movies. Are you familiar with the show Face Off?
No.
It's a reality show where every week everyone's got to do this task where they got to make a monster who lives under the sea, or a monster who lives in the attic, or something to that effect. And every week another makeup artist is voted off.
That actually sounds really cool.
It's a very, very cool show. But this showroom floor kind of looked like a scene from Face Off, because you had all these booths who were doing live makeup tests and makeup appliances on these cosplayers. So you could go over here and see someone getting dressed up and made up like an angel, and over here someone is being made up like a demon, and over here someone is got a face coming out of their stomach and a stomach coming out of their face. It was just unbelievable seeing all this.
But what about all the original sculptures that you get to see, and paintings, and really cool t-shirts, and also when you go to all the Comic-Cons, you see all the superheroes, and everybody's kind of wearing, the same genre kind of costumes, whether it's superhero or Star Wars. You just see a lot of that. Here you get to see the Pinheads and the Freddy Kruegers.
And Pennywise.
I will admit, we did see a Chewbacca, but it was one of the best Chewbacca cosplays I've ever seen. You get to see apes. You get to see a lot of cosplaying that you see it at the other conventions, but it's kind of like a small percentage. Here, it's all you see, and some of these costumes are really, really, really great. Monsterpalooza is probably one of my favorite conventions to go to.
And I used to work in this industry, the special effects makeup, and wow, they really upped their game, seeing everything at the convention and what they were doing, the new tools and the new methods. I was just going crazy, and I'm thinking, how did I never go to a Monsterpalooza before this year? It baffles me. Now, you've attended other Monsterpaloozas, so how did this one stack up for you?
Well, this was great because now they've gotten bigger. They used to be in Burbank, where they were in a little tiny hotel convention center. And so it was a lot of being squished together, and they didn't have as much there. And here, now that it's in Pasadena at the convention center, they had a lot more stuff, and there was a lot more room to walk around, so it wasn't uncomfortable. There was a lot more signings this year than I've ever seen before. People that I didn't even know were going to be there, one of which you mentioned earlier, David Naughton. We didn't know he was going to be there until we walked by. It was a lot of fun. I did not get to go into the museum this year because the line was so long. But generally, I go into the museum where they have all these figures, and life-size figures of all the characters. And somebody told me this year there was a full-size Jaws, and I didn't get a chance to go in and see it. And that's probably my low point of the convention, was that I didn't get to go in and see that. But you asked about my high point, and I have a soundtrack record album for Hellraiser that is signed by the composer Christopher Young. And I was able to get that signed this year by Douglas Bradley, who played Pinhead. and Ashley Lawrence, who plays the lead girl. I'm blanking on her name, but the lead in Hellraiser. So that was kind of cool to be able to get those signatures on my vinyl record album. But just meeting Pinhead was just cool, and getting to take a picture with him, that was kind of cool. It was a little bit of a line because, everybody wanted their picture with Pinhead, but that was a highlight. But also another highlight for me, and generally I spend more time on the floor when I go to Monsterpalooza, and this year we didn't really do that. We spent a lot of time with the Making Apes people. But just spending time with them and talking to them and being able to talk to Tom Burman one-on-one. We have an interview that we're going to play later, but I actually got to talk to him one-on-one with no microphone or anything. That was a pretty big highlight for me.
One of the reasons why we were there this year was to see the Making Apes panel and really support our new friends who are making this awesome documentary. And on this panel that was moderated by director William Conlin, there was Bobby Porter, who always has a word to say.
Hey, Bobby, if you're listening.
Lou Wagner, Tom Burman, makeup artists Vincent Van Dyke and Matt Winston, and film historian Scott Essman. Now, they allowed us to link to their panel, which they posted on their site, so you can now find it as well on our Talking Apes Facebook page. And I would definitely recommend going and checking it out, because lots of great stories about how this documentary was made. And they talked to Lou Wagner about his makeup that they had done on Saturday.
Now, what they did with Lou was they made him up to look like the original character of Lucius that he played in the original Planet of the Apes film, but they made him look 50 years older than we last saw him. It's actually really kind of cool. And there's great footage of this process on the Making Apes Facebook page. So everybody really, really should check that out. But meanwhile, we were lucky enough to speak with Lou just a few minutes right before he went on stage for the Making Apes panel. So, Rich, why don't we go ahead and play that right now?
If he can speak, he belongs in a public zoo. But what'll probably happen is that some money-mad grown-up will put him in a circus. And then we'll have to pay to see what rightfully...
Stop making speeches and show me the order.
We're here with Lou Wagner, who spent Saturday, all day in the makeup chair. Mr. Wagner, tell us all about the experience.
It was reoccurring. It was really fun. The new people, like Vincent Van Dyke, he designed Lucius as a 50-year-old. So, for the 50 years anniversary of Planet of the Apes. And he's great. And the makeup really turned out super, really, really super. They have a new film coming out. It's called Making Apes. And it's a documentary behind the scenes of Planet of the Apes. And what the artists did, the makeup artists, everyone talks about Planet of the Apes for years and years. Very few really actually talk about the makeup process and the people behind it. And that's what this documentary is. And it also has a lot of people who the audience would really know and recognize, telling how they got in the business and how important Planet was to them, when they were young. And so it turned out great.
So now, when you were in the chair, did you have flashbacks to back when they were putting it on originally? And were they good flashbacks, or were they just memories of, God, sitting here getting the makeup on?
No, really, it was a continuation. It seemed like it was just a few days ago that I was doing it, because this stuff accumulates, But it was a very happy experience,
Well, thank you very much for your time here. I think these people over here want to get a picture with you or something. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure, yeah.
So you can talk. I'm Dr. Zira's nephew. This abduction was her idea. You're not really going to the zoo. That's just our story in case somebody stops us.
Get me out of this.
I know it was short, but he had a meeting with William Conlin and the rest of the Making Apes panel. They had some last-minute notes to go over, but we did talk to Lou later on, and he agreed to come on to the show and give us a longer discussion.
Which I really look forward to. To tell you the truth, I'd kind of like to talk to him about a couple of other things he's done outside of the Planet of the Apes universe, because he's had a really, really good career.
And didn't you give him some business advice?
Yes. Well, that actually happened when we saw him the first time over at Dark Delicacies. Remember that signing where we met
Gary Dubin?
Oh my God. Can you believe I flaked on his name? where we met Gary Dubin, and Lou Wagner only had Planet of the Apes pictures out, and I had walked up to him because I'm a big fan of the TV series Raising Hope, which he's also on, and I asked him where the photos for Raising Hope were to sign. And so he decided to put those out, and people started asking him to sign those. And so from that point forward, he makes sure to put those out as well. And so this time when we met him and we went to his table and we were talking to him, I said, "Oh, so you got the Raising Hope pictures out?" And he totally forgot it was me that suggested it to him. He just knew somebody.
Oh, he remembered. He just didn't want to give you a commission.
He wanted to take credit for it or something. No, but when I reminded him, he immediately remembered, because when I reminded him, he's like, "Oh, yeah."
So if any of you ape fans out there need some business career advice, well, you just go to Mark Ogushowitz at markogushowitz.com. All right. Now, next up, we talked to a veteran from the Planet of the Apes TV series, David Naughton, who was featured in the episode The Surgeon, where he played Dr. Stoll.
Now, we have to tell this story because we didn't know that David Naughton was going to be there. And I don't know why. I mean, I looked on the website to see who was going to be there, and I don't remember seeing David Naughton.
No, me neither.
But when we first went walking down the hallway, it's like, hey, there's David Naughton. And then we started thinking, we should get a soundbite from him. He's probably not going to have too much to say about Planet of the Apes. It was just a walk-on role, but maybe we can get a soundbite.
And I thought never. He's going to have a line a mile long. And honestly, of all the actors that were there, and even Alex Winter from Bill and Ted, who I really wanted to talk to, but he had a big line too, David Naughton was the one guy I was really zoning in on.
Right, and it was weird because we just wanted one soundbite, but he always had somebody at his table, and since we weren't, going to ask for a signature and stuff like that, we didn't want to get in the way of, the fans who were there to talk to him and get a signature and all that kind of stuff. So we were kind of waiting for his table to get empty, and so we would go out to where his table was. There would be people there, and then we would go back to the Making Apes table or wherever we went to explore, and we'd come back, and there was always somebody there. But towards the end of the day, it started to trickle down. And we started to kind of just stand there. There's only one person at his table. We'll wait. And we would sit there and we'd wait and we'd wait. And as that person would leave, somebody else would come.
They have a word for us, right? Called stalkers.
But we were persistent. We wanted to get that one soundbite. And eventually, he had nobody at his table. And we went up to him. We asked him for a soundbite. He said, sure. He was really nice. And he was so excited that somebody recognized him from Apes.
We were like ninja podcasters. We just appeared out of nowhere. We dropped from the ceiling.
He's so used to people coming up to him for American Werewolf in London, especially at things like this. He totally didn't expect somebody to ask him about Planet of the Apes. And so we asked him for a soundbite, and he agreed. But he gave us so much more than a soundbite. And you asked me earlier what my highlight of this convention was. It was talking to David Naughton, because I was expecting one soundbite. And what he gave us was a lot more than that. He did go into American Werewolf in London, but his Planet of the Apes stuff and the promise that he made us, which we'll talk about after we hear the... After we hear the interview, this was my highlight, my main highlight for this convention.
I got to admit that I wasn't expecting to talk with him because, like you, I went onto the website and he was nowhere to be found. So seeing him there was a huge surprise. And then talking to him, wow, fantastic. And now let's hear what David Naughton has got to say. We are here with horror icon, but all of us ape fans know him as Dr. Stoll from The Surgeon. He is Mr. David Naughton.
You guys are cracking me up. You guys, you know him from... I go, who knows me as Dr. Stoll from The Surgeon? Nobody, come on.
We could know you as the gentleman who turns into a werewolf from American Werewolf in London.
That's right. That's David Kessler. That was his name, yes. That's me.
We actually talked about your character specifically when we did that episode.
What could you have possibly said? Who was that?
He must be related to Dr. Galen from the Planet of the Apes movie.
That was so funny. Now, do you want to know how that came about, how I got that gig? Well, my brother James Naughton, and he played Pete, he was astronaut Pete Burke, or I think, was it Burke? Yeah. So I was out visiting him in Los Angeles to show a shot at Fox, as you know. So I went down to the set, and they said, hey, we're short chimp, and we're not looking for a short chimp, we're just short a chimp. So I got a chance to go and suit up, basically, and it was one of my first ever gigs and ever acting jobs. I was still a student at the time. So we're talking about, I think it was like 1974, maybe? 74, yeah. And there I was, on the set, and they said, whatever you do, don't do anything that Roddy does. And I go, what's left? What is left to do in a chimp makeup that Roddy hasn't already discovered? So I was sort of tongue-tied, to say the least.
Do you recall any stories of working with Roddy McDowell?
Well, I didn't really get a chance to work with him, and he was very nice to me. But, the thing was, there was one chimp star on that show, and it was Roddy. And, obviously so. He'd mastered it. But I just had a great time. I remember being so nervous, standing off, just off camera, basically, to make an entrance. And I had these crazy, you remember, if you look at those, I mean, it's mostly the head is the makeup and the costume. But the shoes that they wore, these feet, they had these gigantic ape feet. It was almost like having, swim. Yeah, it was like having flippers on your feet, like you swim with, So I was a little bit torn between when they said, come up and hit your mark, if I was supposed to hit it with my ape toes or with my own toes. And that was my big dilemma. So it took me a couple of takes to figure that out.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Your brother was one of the leads, and one of the things we talk about all the time and our fans keep asking us about is he's the only character on the show that has no backstory. Like, they spend plenty of time with all this backstory with all the other characters, but no Pete backstory. Matter of fact, there's one place where he has a flashback and somebody asks him about himself, and we don't even get that. His flashback doesn't even give us backstory. Can you fill us in on some backstory?
I think Dr. Stoll has more of a backstory than Pete.
Really? I know it. No, I sure don't. In fact, you know what? I'm going to save that for my next family reunion. And I said, in my travels, a couple of guys who are fans of yours would like to know the backstory on Pete and see if he can come up with anything.
Then email us, text us, call us, Skype us, whatever you can do, because we would love to know about this.
I definitely will, yeah, because that's a good question. And I bet I'll stump him. We'll find out.
Does he ever talk about apes?
That's not a thing that generally comes up when we're around, but we're going to ask him that question and see what he says.
And then from there, you did An American Werewolf in London, the movie that changed everything for horror. Do you recall any stories about being on that set? And it was a horror comedy, and was it filmed that way?
Well, certainly, yeah. This was an opportunity for me. Having met with John Landis, it was really just a meeting to get the job. He said, why don't you play it? Do you want to play this character? And then the next step was to meet with Rick Baker and to get, the preliminary makeup done. That was another life-changing thing for me, was how involved this makeup and this transformation was going to be when we finally got a chance to shoot it. But overall, I had studied acting in London, so when we went back to shoot the movie, it was like, sort of a homecoming for me, knowing the city well. But here I was playing this cool part in a movie, and got a chance to meet a lot of British actors along the way who were all cast in all those roles, who were more than just supportive. I mean, they really made that movie happen. So it was just a life-changing event for me. And over the years, as I've done these shows, these different conventions, I meet a lot of people who are in the makeup business now because of this film, saying, I saw that makeup and I had to be a makeup artist and it changed my life, and I've now since done other things, but that's the basic movie that dictated what I wanted to do with my life. And I went, wow, that's quite an impact.
Have you talked to the Making Apes people?
No, I haven't. We're not speaking at the moment. No, I'm kidding. No, just, one of the things when you come as a guest of a show, you kind of are sort of at your table, and, which is where you're supposed to be. But unfortunately, you don't get a chance to get around and talk to as many people unless they come to your table, like you guys.
And when they come around, do they know you more as Dr. Stoll from Planet of the Apes, as David Kessler, the Dr. Pepper guy?
I'm a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper, we're a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
because this is, depending on the kind of show, this is obviously Monsterpalooza. So, of course, the bulk of my photos are all from American Werewolf in London. I have one from the Apes. I have one from Dr. Pepper. I have one from, from Hot Dog the Movie. But overall, yeah, it's all about werewolves here.
Now, when you were on the set of Werewolf in London, what was your thoughts when Rick Baker and the crew had you up in the... What is that noise? Is that you?
It's not me.
Yeah, it's your phone?
We'll cut that part out. So, when you were on the floor, writhing in pain, coming to as the werewolf, what did you think about that?
I couldn't wait to get it done because I'd been in makeup 10 hours a day for 5 days to shoot that 2-minute transformation scene. So it was a real ordeal. The kind of makeup that Rick Baker and all of his proteges don't even do to actors anymore. He even admits, he says, "Yeah, we tortured those boys," both Griffin Dunn and myself. So it was, we were pioneers in the makeup world. You don't do the same thing anymore. We don't use the hard glass lenses to put in your eyes anymore, just as an example. And a lot of it is, with CGI, they just put dots on your body and, it's done. I was actually sitting in the makeup chair and it's, I'm not sitting here going, yeah, they don't do it like they used to. It sounds like such an old timer, but yeah, this was some effects that they don't do anymore because it's unsafe.
I'm sure a lot of the fans ask you a lot of the same questions. What's the most obscure question you've ever gotten?
Down in Australia at a show, and the guy stands up in a big room. We have a big Q&A, and he goes, "Now, were you the actor or the werewolf?" That was the question.
And you said,
"Sit down." That's all I could say to him. Sit down. Yeah, so it was the dumbest question I think I've ever been asked in 34 years.
Is there anything you're working on right now that you want to promote?
Well, I can't really promote Sharknado 5 because it does its own promotion. But, yeah, I did a little cameo in there, and they had me doing some werewolf poses and things of that nature, which, was fun to be in that franchise. Down just a couple of guys down here, Andrew Devoff, who he and I just did a movie called The Hatred, which is out on DVD. I also like to promote The Brutal Massacre, which is a dark comedy. It's not even dark. It's just a hilarious comedy about the making of horror films, in which I play a director of really bad movies, and it's a comedy.
And where can we find Brutal Massacre, a comedy?
You can find it right here on my table on DVD, and it's available on DVD for sure.
Do you have a website that people can go to?
Yeah, people can find me at davidnaughton.com. And also at the next horror show.
How about a Twitter handle?
Yes, David N512000 is at yahoo.com.
Okay, do you have a Facebook page the apes can go to?
Facebook I'm not on, but those are I would think Instagram is probably the best one. David N512000.
Okay. We just saw someone walk away from here with your head. Well, what is that all about?
What's going on there?
We're going to stop for the Naked Bride of Frankenstein.
The Naked Bride of Frankenstein. You never know what you're going to see here.
What's the weirdest thing you've seen here all day long? 'Cause we've seen a lot of really weird stuff.
That's pretty weird.
Is it odd when you see kids walk by in horror makeup and dressed as their favorite horror villains?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny because the kids that I meet are younger and younger fans, and they've seen this movie, and it doesn't scare them. So I don't know how are they desensitized to horror films. But, the kids are pretty knowledgeable, I have to say.
Yeah, what do you think about when you see kids dressed up as the clown from It? That's not a movie kids should be watching.
I know. Well, as I said, kids have come to this table with their parents, and they go, "Oh, yeah, we've seen this movie a bunch." I go, "How old are you? 10? I mean, this movie, American Werewolf, is not for kids, and yet they've seen it. What can I say?"
And earlier on, a woman walked away. Was she carrying your head?
Oh, yeah. Somebody did a big, a bust of me in the transformation scene and wanted me to sign it, which I'm happy to do. As you can tell, I'll sign just about anything. Oh, look, I got some fans.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on Talking Apes. We really appreciate it.
Listen, it's fun. I've never been on Talking Apes, but maybe I will in the future. Nice talking to you, too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. How about it, guys?
Oh, thank you. Now, to follow David on Instagram, that was David N, the letter N as in Nancy, 512000.
Oh, man, I still think it was really cool talking with David, and he seemed legitimately excited to talk to someone who recognized him from the Surgeon episode. When you introduced him with the name of his character, I think that blew him away. I'm really happy with this interview. I really, really, really glad that we stalked him long enough.
And I'm sure he gets David Kessler from American Werewolf in London all the time. So he was probably happy to talk about something else.
Right, but we should also mention, and you heard it in the interview, and he told us after the interview as well, he seemed real excited about it. He promised to talk to his brother, James Naughton, who played Pete in the live-action series, about Pete's backstory, and he did promise that he would get back to us if he got an answer from his brother. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
And you had given him a couple of Talking Apes pins, so all of our contact information is right there, so there's no excuse.
Well, I also did this. I gave him one that said Talking Apes, and I gave him one that said Talking Apes TV, which I call the classic pin. And I told him, give the one that says Talking Apes TV to your brother. To kind of hint to him that that's what he's got to be listening to.
Wait, Mark, hold on one second. I'm looking on eBay. Why is our Talking Apes TV button on there?
How much?
10,000. No, wrong decimal. $1.
$1.
Yes.
Okay.
Just go on to David N512000 to obtain your Talking Apes TV button for $1. All right.
But how cool is that? How cool is that? Because when we talked to him after the interview, he basically said, yeah, well, I hope to come back on your show.
So done.
Yeah, so I hope he means it. I really, really do. And I give him like until after Christmas, because he said, the next time he has like a family reunion or however he put it. So that's the holidays. We got to reach back out to him.
Oh, we definitely will. All right, Mark, next up, we had some fun with the LA City Costume Group featuring our good friend Max Cervantes, who was there as Caesar.
Wait, you should tell everybody how you ran into Max to begin with.
Oh, I ran into Max at Kamikaze circa, 2015?
That's not what I mean. I meant at Monsterpalooza. Remember, we were in the room waiting for the Making Apes panel to begin when this cosplayer in an ape costume just came walking up to you and started talking to you as if he knew you. And I was like looking back, I was like, do you know who this is? Because he was in costume. We couldn't see any faces or anything. And I'm like, do we have a fan? Maybe this is somebody who listens to our show. And it turned out it was Max.
Yes, he is a fan and he's a friend. Now, it was fun talking to this group because we talked to them as cosplayers and we talked to them as actual apes. And the makeup on these cosplayers is just so perfect. A little bit of me inside was fanboying just because I've always loved this vintage ape makeup, like I've said a million times on this show. And just seeing it up close and talking to these apes and chimpanzees, yeah, I was very, very excited.
And as a bonus, we were eventually joined by a very special guest and friend Talking Apes, Mr. Bobby Porter.
Cornelius, are you all right? No, Mother. I'm just dead.
We are now here with the Los Angeles Ape City Costume Group. Everyone go around and introduce yourselves and who you're cosplaying as.
Well, I'm Max Cervantes, and I am costuming as Cornelius.
Don Gibbons as Julius.
Michael Avitri as Gorilla Soldier.
Martha Fine as Mutant.
Now, tell us about the fan reaction, because I know at this Monsterpalooza, people are going crazy over making apes, and you four right now are representing the classic apes. So how are the fans reacting to your cosplaying outfits?
Well, I would have to say fantastically, because everybody seems to remember the classic Planet of the Apes. Everybody seems to have grown up with it. And it's like getting treated like a rock star, because we can barely walk a few feet without somebody stopping to ask to take our pictures.
Or getting a soundbite.
They're fun to interact with, but it's the stench I could do without.
Damn stinking humans.
I don't care what the humans' reaction is to me, quite frankly.
If you could fire hose anyone in this room, who would it be?
Starting with you.
If you can water down some of those autograph prices, that'd be fantastic. If an ape soldier were here now, how would he respond to all this?
Oh, boy. I would say there's way too many humans out of cages here.
All right. And how about the mutants?
The mutants would use their mind power and make everybody get out of the way so I would have clear passage and lower the autograph prices.
Banana daiquiris for everyone. Oh, my wife always says she loathes bananas, but I like them.
Where is Zara at Monsterpalooza? Is she around?
Sadly, she's not here today. I left her at home baking me a chocolate cake.
I thought I saw her in the autograph line getting Pinhead's autograph.
I left her at home make me a chocolate cake.
Okay, ready? Urko or Ursus? Who do you fear the most?
Oh, definitely Ursus. Definitely Ursus.
All right, now let's talk about ape fandom. Tell us what your highlights in ape fandom has been since the very beginning.
Meeting Bobby Porter.
Yes, of course. Of course. Well, for me, one of my bucket list things to do was to visit the home planet and go out to Fox Ranch, as I did last Sunday in full costume and makeup. And I went to all the different filming locations that I remembered from going back out there when I was 16, and the Ape City set was still there. And so I trudged all the way out there, 2 miles trek, all the way out there in full costume, and they don't allow cars out there because I had to have those pictures for my bucket list. And next, I want to do it with everyone else, and you should come with us.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't call us last Sunday, but you know what? We're not going to hold that against you. All right, Ape Soldier, how about yourself? What has been your ape highlight since you were first discovering Planet of the Apes?
You know, I think it's the formation of this group. Our group is a cohesive unit, and we all adore the movie a lot, and it brings me personally great joy to share our love of the film with all the fans.
If anyone wanted to join the group, where would they go?
We have, do we have a Facebook presence?
Well, there's a lot of us on the Planet of the Apes cosplay page. Okay. So people can get a hold of us there. There's a lot of other people who also cosplay as apes, also there on Facebook at the Planet of the Apes cosplay page. But it's not really ours, but it's everyone's else, because there's people from back east and San Francisco and everywhere. So,
like the Stormtrooper 501st group, they have to pass inspection.
The lower primates are not invited.
No squirrel monkeys.
No squirrels at all. All right, how about yourself? What has been your ape fandom moment, your highlight ape fandom moment?
Meeting Tom Burman and Bobby Porter. It was pretty exciting. I met Tom before, but it did happen today. It was pretty exciting, and he wanted to go for Halloween as Planet of the Apes, and the year before I had been a werewolf. And I said, I don't want to wear hair. So I decided I would be a mutant. And usually I go whole, full regalia, you could tell. And, muscle face. But I just didn't have time this time to get the mask ready, so.
So she went as the beautiful mutant. I can't believe I just said that about a human.
You're starting to turn. Good for you. It's called progression. But coming over here to you, Julius, what has been your ape fandom highlight moment?
Well, again, like the soldier said here, is the creation of the group and the camaraderie of people across the nation across the world that we've come in contact with just because of apes, and meeting all the original people involved in making the original movies it's been pretty okay.
Kids, even little kids, don't seem to be afraid of us. I've had lots of toddlers who are like 7 years or less come up to me and they want their picture with the apes. So it's awesome.
Did they ever ask you if you're Galen, Cornelius, or Caesar?
They just assume properly that I'm Dr. Cornelius.
I'll tell you how stupid humans are. I've been called Cornelius at least 5 times today. I'm a gorilla, not an ape.
What would happen if someone called you a monkey?
I would no. I'd say, I do not have a tail. I am an evolved primate.
Richard calls you monkey all the time behind your back.
I'm talking about the monkeys. Hey, we're the monkeys. Now, you know what? I think I just heard Bobby Porter say no. Let's get him.
No! No way!
Get Bobby Porter.
We're spreading rumors about you, Bobby.
What?
I can't believe it.
You called us monkeys?
Hey, I called him the gorilla of my dreams. Okay?
All right, we're now joined by Mr. Bobby Porter. So, Bobby, what is the one word that apes never want to hear?
You're fired. That's 2 words.
That was a quiz, Bobby.
I know I failed the quiz. It's been a while. Hey, are you guys having fun here?
Yeah.
Are you guys all supporting Making Apes?
Making apes.
Yay, making apes.
Bobby, how are you supporting Making Apes today at Monsterpalooza 2018?
Holding up that sign earlier, he was supporting it. Yeah.
I'm actually out in front of the convention center. I got one of those signs you spin around, and I'm actually getting the hang of it. I might, in a couple of weeks, actually have it down.
Ape shall never kill Abe.
No, Aldo, no!
A big thank you to our good friend Max Cervantes, who I said, hey, Max, come on over here and talk to us. And he got all of the ape cosplayers over and had that great discussion.
The Los Angeles Ape City cosplayer group's always so much fun. But the weird thing is I wanted to ask you a question, because I was thinking about it. As much as I love the new Apes movies, it's very rare to see anyone cosplaying as the newer apes. But the classic apes seem to always have representation, a lot of times by the Los Angeles Ape City cosplayer group. Why do you think that we're not seeing as much love for the new apes at these conventions?
Well, we did see someone as Koba. Do you recall back at Kamikaze circa, 2015?
Something like that. And I do remember that, but that was one.
Yeah, that's one, and that's pretty much where the tally ends. These vintage apes just touches that nostalgic nerve to a lot of people of our age. So they're going to invest time and money in making these fantastic outfits just because it reminds them of such a great time in their life. And I think that goes back to anything nostalgic and why a lot of merchandise now, whether it be Star Wars or apes, they're going back to that nostalgic era because they know that people like us will go, wow, this is like seeing my childhood again. Here's my $20. I don't care what it is. I want this. Or in the ape cosplayer world, those costumes I know are expensive, but look how much joy they're getting out of this and all the friends they're making. And like they were saying, they go to these conventions and people just swarm around them looking at these apes straight on just touches that nostalgic nerve in me. And I just get so happy inside.
I got to say, I think you're hitting on something because I know that when I go to any convention and I see something from a recent movie, it's kind of just, my reaction is kind of like, oh, look, it's Captain America. Or, oh, look, it's the new character from Star Wars. But the minute I see something older, like I remember when we were at Kamikaze and we saw Snake Plissken, how cool that was. And maybe it is that nostalgic feel. But, we still do see a lot of people dressing up as newer Star Wars characters and stuff, and they're just not doing it with the apes. So I was just kind of curious about that. I do know that I personally am on board with what you were saying, because when I see the older characters of almost anything, that's kind of where that's the stuff that fascinates me, that people have such a fandom that they're digging up the old classic stuff.
Oh, if you want to see me go crazy at a Star Wars convention, watch me as I'm looking at a cosplayer who is dressed as a Kenner Star Wars action figure. Tears come to my eyes. I'm just so full of joy because it reminds me of when I was a little kid playing with these action figures. And now seeing these vintage apes walking around, I do think about those times when I was a kid playing with Planet of the Apes and how much I've always wanted to wear that ape makeup. So much of that is psychological. So much of that goes through my mind when I'm talking to these ape vintage cosplayers and just looking at them. It's just a feeling that you get that draws you in. Unlike something like Pennywise from the Stephen King movie / book, It. There were some Pennywises walking around there. It's like, oh, that's pretty fun. And the makeup's fantastic. However, you have an Ursus walk by me, and I'm just a big gooey mess.
I think that's it, because when I saw Pennywise, and there was at least one really great Pennywise costume there, but when I saw it, I'm kind of like, well, that's a cool costume. But when you see something nostalgic or you see something older, it's always like, oh my God, you see that? As opposed to, look, somebody's Pennywise. But the older stuff, like when we saw Snake Plissken that time, I remember I said, hey, Rich, that's Snake Plissken. The reaction is totally different.
Oh, very, very much so. Very, very much so. All right, Mark, now let's move into the now, and let's roll into this very special discussion we had with makeup legend and artist Tom Burman, who He had worked on the original Planet of the Apes film. He had worked on Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and he was there signing autographs and talking with fans and taking pictures and shaking hands and just being very, very personable as he's promoting Making Apes. This is such a great guy, which I cannot wait to have back on the show again.
Right. It was really great to see the respect he was getting from so many people who, saw him for the legendary makeup artist he was. And like I said earlier in the show, I got to talk to him for like 20 minutes one-on-one, and it just literally was such a highlight to me. And because he was so busy, I got to tell you, were you expecting to get an interview from him? I thought we were just going to, exchange information and hopefully get him on the show. I didn't actually expect him to sit down with us, and I was so thrilled that he did that for our listeners.
Right, because he had a huge line all day long of people coming over and talking to him and donating to Making Apes. And so I know he was really, really busy, but as the convention was closing the doors and he was getting ready to go home, we walked up to him and said, hey, you know what, before you start packing it up, can we get a few words? And he was extremely generous with his time. We are now here at the Making Apes booth at Monsterpalooza, and we are talking to the man, the legend, Mr. Tom Burman. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm real good.
Yeah, can you give us an update about Making Apes and how the fans are responding?
Well, we've got a tremendous amount of response this weekend. It's amazing that people come and they know everything I've done. They know more than what I've done than I know. They bring up things that I've long forgot, but when they ask me questions about apes, you realize how much people really know. I mean, beyond just the film, who did what and how it was done, and et cetera. It's incredible.
Now, when you were first hired for the original Planet of the Apes film, do you recall where in the process they were and what your original title was?
I was an apprentice at 20th Century Fox, but I'd worked with John Chambers at Don Poe Studios doing this big gorilla sculpt with my father, and during that time, I got an apprenticeship, which was at Fox, which was very fortunate for me because there were 95 applicants before me, including the Ben Nye, who's department head, his own son. So because I had worked with my father, knew how to make molds, knew how to sculpt and that sort of thing, I jumped all those people and got the apprenticeship. And then 6 months later, I was cleaning up after him in his office, and I hear him talking about this movie that can't be done. And they had done tests on it, and the studio didn't like them, and the studio executive board did not want to do this film, and they wanted to bring in Bud Westmore from Universal Studios because he had done List of Adrian Messenger, and the problem was that I knew that he was not the person who really did the work, that John Chambers did it, and so I interrupted the whole thing. Being an apprentice, I didn't even know if I should speak, but I said, in a Tourette's moment, I said, John Chambers did it. I actually said, he didn't do it. And they said, who didn't do it? And I said, Bud Westmore. And they said, who did? And I said, John Chambers. And they said, get him on the phone. So I called him on the phone. He was making Spock's ears at the time. And he said, I'm busy right now, Tommy. And I said, they wanted to get Bud Westmore. And he goes, what? Oh, he hated Bud Westmore. And so he said, I'll be right over. And he picked it up. Following Monday, he drives in his little Buick Skylark. I see this big Popeye arm stick out of the car waving at me as I'm coming out of the makeup department heading for the lab. And he said, Tommy. And he gets out and he says, it's you and me, Tommy. And I said, what? And he hands me the script of Planet of the Apes. And he says, I'm going to win the Academy Award. And they didn't even give Academy Awards back then. I thought, what's he talking about?
And do you recall some of the projects that you had worked directly on? Were you sculpting? Were you foam running? Were you molding?
Well, I became his assistant, and he and I spent the first 6 weeks putting stuff together, just he and I, on a table that was 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, a little marble top table. And then he said, let's clean this place out. We threw all the old artifacts away, including the head of the fly, threw right in the garbage. And he didn't care about that stuff, and I was raised around that stuff all my life, so I had no appreciation for it. Who knew that it'd be worth a fortune today? And so I was myself and a guy named Werner Kepler. We ran, we made molds, we took the impressions, John did all the sculpting of the principals, Pat Newman did the background people, we made the molds, we ran the molds in foam latex, 38 molds, twice a day, 7 days a week, all the way through the whole film. I was only making $90 a week as an apprentice, flat, so I got no overtime or anything. Somebody discovered I was working, my assistant department head, Richard Hamilton, just said, "What are you doing here on a Sunday?" And I said, "Well, I work every Sunday." And he said, "Well, you're on apprenticeship wages." And so he went back and talked to Ben Nye, and they decided to give me journeyman wages. All of a sudden, I made over 10 times that much every week. I went home and took a roll of cash. I had cash my first paycheck in $10 bills or less. And I came home and I threw the money at her, and it rained money. And she ran around the room, grabbing.
To go from an apprentice to key makeup on a film like Planet of the Apes, that's never been done since.
Yeah. Perfect timing. It was that perfect storm. And my favorite saying is, you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans. Because I don't know how it worked. I'm here. And so my job was I painted all the appliances. That was my job because I was the only one who knew how to airbrush. And I was in charge of all the background masks because I'd worked with doing that with my father. So I set them up, and we were producing the masks. And I didn't put the hair on them, but I cast them and paint them. And my job also was to set up. We did the whole thing like paint by numbers. We put 2 of their makeups on vacuum forms, and we had all the colors set up, which we matched. I matched the painting I did, and the hair and the hackle and all the parts and pieces. So John did not want anybody bringing their own idea what an ape should look like. So we tried to make it as standard as possible.
Do you recall some of the first makeup tests on the actors, and who were they?
Well, we did it on a guy named Joe Wong and another guy named George Sasaki and a girl named, I don't remember her last name, Candace, a Filipino girl, and beautiful girl. And those were the first 3 we tested. And we tested on we were going to use a black guy for the gorilla, and the studio went bonkers. Said, "Oh my God, we can't do that." It was silly, but they cast this Jewish bodybuilder who had the totally wrong face for it, and he was the gorilla. And we tested on the lot, and we tested it, all the makeups of them walking out of one of the little buildings that Bill Kreber made. And they came out, and they would come to camera, and they would move their face around, then turn sideways, both ways, turn around, because they were testing wardrobe also. And then I walked out last wearing a Fred Flintstone head going, "Hey, buddy, it's me, Fred Flintstone." And I saw Bill Kreber, color run right out of his face, and I realized that was a big mistake. I shouldn't have done that to him. He was a really nice guy. He forgave me, but that was a stupid thing I did.
Can we see you in the background as Fred Flintstone in any of the ape scenes?
I don't know if they had it on film, but I don't know whatever happened to that. Maybe, probably around someplace.
That's awesome. Now, the classic scene in Planet of the Apes is the chase through the cornfield. You must have been there that day.
I was.
Tell us everything about that day.
Well, my brother had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, so I had him hire him. He needed a job, and he was one of the people making up all the background humans. And that was one of the greatest shots when they first see that gorilla. Yeah, because it was like, oh my God, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
But it was God, it was so busy. We were, like I said, I worked 18 hours a day.
Were you around the set when they were actually shooting that? And did you think, wow, this is going to work?
I knew right from the beginning it was going to work. I just knew. I believed my heart. Intuitively, I knew we were on something really big. But I spent most of the time making this stuff in the lab and getting it ready. Then later on, about halfway through the film, I would go out to like the Fox Ranch. I would do a makeup. Then they'd scoop me right back to the lab again. And it was my job, as I said, to lay out all the appliances for the next day and do all that. Yeah.
A lot of these big iconic films that we know of today, behind the scenes when they were shooting it, the crew and the cast didn't really believe in it. And I think the epitome of that is Star Wars. When they were making Star Wars, the cast and crew were like, what are we doing? Was there ever an air about that on Planet of the Apes, or was everyone in since day one?
Well, I think some of the people, most of the makeup people were hired, had never done makeup before. So we gave 2 weeks of school. I didn't give the school, John Chambers did, of how to put an appliance on. So they would bring a guy in, they would do an ape makeup on him, take him off at lunch, go to lunch, come back, put it right back on him again, and they did that for 2 weeks to learn how to do it, then do it just specifically the way John Chambers wanted. As I said, he didn't want most seasoned makeup artists because he didn't want somebody adding something to it. Now, the guy that did Roddy and the guy that did Zyra, those were seasoned makeup artists that John could trust. And the guy and the guy that did Zaius was Ken Chase, who used to work in a beauty shop. And I think he was a brilliant makeup artist. But to talk about Star Wars, I was doing Island of Dr. Moreau down in the Caribbean, and I had gotten a call from George Lucas to do Star Wars. And I thought, Star Wars, what a stupid name. I mean, it sounded like one of those corny science fiction things. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. And they said, you got highly recommended. We'd love to have you on. I said, no, I pass. So I'm working down there in the Virgin Islands, and the camera operator said, Jesus, I worked on the worst piece of crap I've ever seen. I said, what's that? And he said, Star Wars. I said, oh, boy, I turned it down. He said, you're smart. And because they didn't realize they were using Scotch light in front projection, they didn't see that through the camera.
Yeah, were you going to work on second unit, like the cantina scenes?
They wanted me to make the bantas turn elephants into
right.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, this is really ridiculous.
You and I were talking earlier about the way they use CGI, and the makeup effects is kind of, in a lot of ways, going away. So we were listening to Rick Baker talk, and he actually has been embracing it. And so I want to know if you could tell our fans your feelings towards CGI kind of taking over where makeup was, and where you think makeup might be going as an art form with this, with all this motion capture kind of happening now.
Well, my attitude about that, when I was working with my father, making props and stuff ever since I was a kid, and my 1950s television became pretty popular, and everybody in the film industry was saying, oh my God, nobody's going to go to films if they can sit home and watch television. It just got bigger. Then color television came out, and it just got bigger. Then runaway production, they said, oh, Hollywood's losing this thing. It just got bigger. Now CGI's come out. And, when I started the very first makeup independent studio with my brother and John Chambers, there were probably 7 of us in the world back then that did this kind of work, total. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know who they would be, but, Stuart Freeborn, myself, Dick Smith, and so forth. Rick was just still a kid. And today there's probably 5,000. It's just going to get bigger. And my feeling about CGI, when it marries to reality, when it marries to makeup, and you can use it where it's most prudent, I don't really care for the latest ape movies myself, because it's lost some kind of little. It's brilliant as it is. The work is gorgeous. I would never fault that, but I don't get the same feeling of a soul inside as I did that first movie. That first movie, because of all the little nuances actors bring to it, they're screw-ups. Any little thing gives them something that it's hard to recreate in CGI. I embrace it entirely, but I enjoy more that when it's mixed.
What's the last film that you've really enjoyed that involved a lot of makeup effects?
Oh, gosh. I think Lord of the Rings was just completely over the top. Some of the makeups were beautiful and some of them weren't so great, but it didn't matter. It was volume, and it reminded me of doing Planet of the Apes all over again.
Can you tell us who it was that you looked up to, and what it was that you saw maybe on the big screen or somewhere else that made you say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to get into?
My dad was working on I don't remember whether it was a Jungle Gym or a Tarzan movie, and he had to put big tusks on an elephant to make it look like a mastodon or mastodon, and he had made a big hairpiece thing and hung over they make it look hairy. And I was a young kid, I 8 to 10 years old, I don't remember exactly. My dad tells me more about it than I remember, and I went to the set with him, and there was a makeup artist on the set, and he put a bruise or cut on my arm, and he asked me, because I kept watching what he was doing, he said, "Why don't we put a cut on your arm. That's what it was. And I said, yeah. And he put a little cut on my arm. And he said, you know, who's your dad? And I said, that's my dad over there. And he knew my father because my father had made the foam latex pieces for the Wolfman, because my father knew how to run foam latex and the makeup artist did not. So he said, you know, if you're half as talented as your dad is, you should get into makeup. So that seed stuck in my head. That was Jack Pierce.
Wow. And now, 50 years after the release of Planet of the Apes, here you are working on another Apes film. You are heavily involved in Making Apes, the documentary that really showcases the makeup artists for the Planet of the Apes series. Now, this was your idea, and then you went to William Conlin, the director, correct?
That's correct. I was taking a memoir class, and I was doing a little piece in short stories, writing my story in short stories. And one of the stories was Planet of the Apes, and I realized nobody ever covered the people that really did the work. They've covered all the production and the producers and the actors and that, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. But nobody ever really covered how did it feel and what did this do for your career and did you believe in this? And so that's what started this idea. And I went to William and then I said, geez, why don't we get the people who were tremendously inspired by Planet of the Apes, like Howard Berger or Rick Baker. And so we've interviewed 34 people, directors like Guillermo del Toro and John Lannis and Richard Donner and Joe Dante and so forth. So, you know, everybody, all these people were inspired in some way or another.
Right. We started our podcast talking about the television show specifically. Did you have anything to do with the television show? And if you didn't, did they ask you for any advice or anything when it came to doing the makeup appliances?
Werner Kepler, who was the other person who worked in the lab all the time, he kind of took over that lab stuff. And I had started with John Chambers, I'd started the very first independent makeup studio. And so we were really too busy to get involved in that. And I wasn't asked anything about it, but it was already set. And to tell you the truth, I left on the third one, halfway through, to go off and do another film with Charlton Heston, the Hawaiians. So I was aped out by that time.
I'm sure Charlton Heston saw you and said, no! He had flashbacks.
Yeah, get away from me.
Now, after the fans of Planet of the Apes and his makeup fans see your film, Making Apes, what's that one thing you want them to walk away knowing or feeling?
I want them to walk away knowing that maybe I can have the same possibility. Maybe these people are so real that did this work that anybody, you know, if you point yourself in that direction, you have the passion and the endurance, you can do the same thing.
Man, I got to tell you, there's nothing like listening to a legend in their craft talk. But I have to admit that through the whole entire interview, I had one thought running through the back of my head. Did he say that while cleaning up the area where they were putting things together, they threw away the head of the fly?
He did say that, and I recall cringing.
I couldn't get that out of my head. He threw away the head of the fly?
Well, if it makes you feel any better, these masks for these films, they're not made to last anything more than like a month or two. And then they just start falling apart. So I'm sure it was crumbling into dust at that point anyway. Does that help you?
It would have been more acceptable to me if the story had been something more like, and we put the head of the fly on and messed around and took pictures and everything before we threw it away.
Well, back then they didn't really have social media, so what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, but you still would have done that. You know it.
All right, Mark, like we were saying earlier, we were really there at Monsterpalooza to help and support our friends over at Making Apes, like William Conlin, the director, and we caught up with him just minutes after his panel, so he was on a Making Apes high. We are now here with William Conlin, the director of Making Apes. Hey, William.
Hey, good to see you guys.
So how is the experience here at Monsterpalooza for you?
Well, this has been fantastic. This is our second year in a row here with Making Apes. Last year we actually premiered our first trailer, and this year we premiered our final trailer. And the response from the fans has truly been tremendous. Last year we were the second panel of the day, and the first panel had about 50 attendees, and I thought, ooh, that's not good. We're going to maybe get, 50, 60 people come in on ours. And I stepped out of the theater to just catch some air and compose my thoughts, and there was a line around the building to get in, and the first person in line was dressed as Dr. Zaius. And I just took this big sigh of relief, and we ended up having a packed house. It was the same thing today. Just a great crowd. We had some incredible cosplayers come in, and there's just so much enthusiasm about this film. I'm truly honored to be a part of it.
What was the feeling you got after the panel today for Making Apes?
Just an immense sense of gratitude that these stories are finally being told. I will be eternally grateful to Tom for coming to me and asking me to make this film for him. He has so many incredible stories. These makeup artists have so many stories, and it would be such a tragedy if these stories were lost.
When Tom Burman came to you, honestly, how did you feel? I mean, he could have gone to a lot of documentarians, and he chose you. Yes. How great does that feel?
It was truly an honor. Now, my first thought when he said he wanted to do this was, aren't there a million documentaries about Planet of the Apes out there? So I did a little research, and I saw that there were some. Obviously, Roddy's incredible documentary is kind of the high watermark. So I watched that, and I thought, surely there's a ton of makeup in there. And in the 2-hour documentary, there's about 90 seconds worth of makeup talk. There's one single shot of John Chambers. There's no representation of Tom Burman, Dan Strepek, Ken Chase, Werner Kepler, all these incredible names who shaped the second half of the 20th century in Hollywood makeup. So I immediately saw that we had a story to tell, and we sought the older guys first, the original artists. We wanted to get them in the can. Sure enough, we lost Maurice Stein just a couple of months ago, so we got a great interview with him when he was still in very good health. And then the word started getting around about what we were doing, and all the people who were influenced by them, the Greg Nicotero, V. Neal, Rick Baker, Greg Canham, all these names straight down the line. They said, we've got to talk about this. I got to talk about when I was 8 years old and I saw Planet of the Apes. So film historians then started hearing about it. Leonard Maltin, Alex Ago at USC, Scott Essman. We get them all involved, and they're talking about the relevancy of Planet of the Apes in the cultural phenomenon that it created. Then the filmmakers get involved. We've got Richard Donner, Joe Dante, John Landis, who was actually on set as a mailboy at 20th Century Fox at the time. He used to hang out in the makeup lab with John, Tom, and Werner. And he's got all these stories about when he was 19 years old hanging out with these makeup guys as they were running all the latex for Planet of the Apes. Then we culminated in our last interview for the documentary just 2 weeks ago with Mr. Guillermo del Toro, who can trace Planet of the Apes being the moment that he wanted to be a filmmaker. And the first film that he actually made was when he was 8 years old. He stole his dad's Super 8 camera and made stop-motion movies with his Planet of the Apes action figures.
Planet of the Apes has been such a revolutionary, inspiring film for a lot of these filmmakers. What do you hope people will walk away from Making Apes? What kind of a feeling? How do you want them to be inspired?
Well, I want them to have a grander appreciation of the makeup that went into this film. This is 50 years ago, and up until this point, nobody had ever seen a makeup like this. It changed the game for everything after that. I know Star Trek was already on the air, and Lucas was already thinking of Star Wars, but Star Trek as we know it, Star Wars, all these incredible franchises, they would not exist in the way that they do today without what they did on Planet of the Apes. And I also want people to have a grander appreciation of makeup. One of the things we just talked about in our panel is the fact that people are constantly battling back and forth as to whether or not makeup and computers and makeup. I don't see it as a battle. I see it as a synergy between the two. And people like Vincent van Dyke appreciate computers with makeup. And as he just said in our panel, you look at The Shape of Water, that was practical makeup with digital effects on top of it. So there's so much appreciation that can be brought into the world of makeup, and I think makeup is going to be around for a long time to come.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, when I got here today, I mean, I knew some of the people that you had involved, that you had interviewed. The Guillermo del Toro was a surprise. I didn't know he was in your documentary till today. And then as you guys showed the trailer, I also saw people like Richard Donner, who I'm a huge fan of. Is there anybody that you got into the documentary that you thought when you first were thinking about getting him, you said, oh, now he's not going to be in this documentary? And then when he said yes, or she said yes, you're like, all excited because you were able to lock this one person or two people in.
Well, it's absolutely Guillermo, because we knew the stories about Guillermo. We knew what I was just talking about when he was a kid. And I really wanted to have that in there because there's nobody in the industry today who is doing a better job of keeping makeup alive than Guillermo del Toro. He is the monster man of this generation, and he will go down as one of the biggest proponents of practical makeup and special effects in monster movies. So when we started the project, he had all these things going on. Shape of Water was in production at the time, and then it goes into this huge Oscar race, and everyone knows that it's going to sweep the Oscars and be this cultural phenomenon like it's been. So I thought, okay, he's going to be too busy. We did an interview with Mike Elizalde, who worked with him on the 2 Hellboy films, and Mike kindly put us in touch with Guillermo, and he said he'd love to do it, but he's really busy with projects. We're going to work our schedules, and we kind of just talked every couple of months. We'd say, okay, well, we're working on this, you're working on that, we're going to make this happen eventually. I thought, sure, if it happens, it's going to be great, but we know how busy he is. And then the Oscars happen, he wins the Oscars, and we see him, and he says, how about next week? We're there. We're in his office. We did this phenomenal hour-long interview where he talked about so many intricacies of Planet of the Apes and what it means to him and what it means to all other artists. And then we did something truly special, in my opinion. Guillermo said, we've got about 45 minutes before he has to head out. And Tom said, well, let's just chat while they're tearing down. I said, no. Let's put a mic on Tom. We're going to put you guys on camera in front of each other. So we filmed 30 minutes unscripted, just the two of them talking to each other. They talked about Planet of the Apes. They talked about The Shape of Water. They talked about Argo and the CIA. All these incredible topics together. Absolutely no prompts, just a conversation between two icons. So what we're doing right now is we've got our Indiegogo campaign on. We're at about 25% of that. When we hit 50%, this is our incentive to get us to 50%, we are going to put that conversation online for everybody. So get us to 50% and you will see this incredible conversation between Tom and Guillermo.
Go ahead and tell us where we can go to fund Making Apes.
Yes, go to Indiegogo.com, then search Making Apes. You'll see our poster. It is the image of Roddy McDowell wearing sunglasses, and you can see Tom Burman's image in the sunglasses. And we've got some incredible perks on there. We're not just asking you for money. You're getting stuff in return. We have autographs. We have memorabilia. Tom Burman has reached into his personal collection. We have jars that belonged to John Chambers. He labeled them JC himself. We have prosthetics from Beneath and the original Planet of the Apes. We have Dr. Zaius's prosthetic from Beneath the Planet of the Apes available. We have posters signed by every single person who's been interviewed for this documentary. I think it's the most comprehensive piece of makeup autographs in history.
What date do you want to hit that 50% mark, and what is the final date to hit that 100% mark?
Well, we wanted to hit that mark yesterday, so go in and support right away. But we're running the campaign through the middle of May, so you got a little bit of time, but get on there, support the campaign. We're going to have a lot of really cool things available, and just take a look. There's original artwork by Tom Burman, which I think is truly impressive. Some of them we're doing limited prints of, but most of them are just one-of-ones. It's all of his favorite personal makeups from different films. So we've got four artworks from Planet of the Apes, Zira, Zaius, Cornelius, and Ursus. We have Prophecy, The Island of Dr. Moreau, Scrooged. We have The Goonies. We have The Devil's Reign. All these iconic films that Tom Burman worked on. So get on there and please support.
All right, that was William Conlin, the director of Making Apes, and I'm sure we'll have you on very soon when Apes has its first screening. And I think during our conversation on our last show, you said September?
We're targeting completion of the film in September. We'll probably do our first screening in December, and then we're going to try and do some film festivals and see where we go from there. If you want to learn more about the project outside of the Indiegogo, then follow us on Facebook at Making Apes Documentary, on Instagram and Twitter at Making Apes.
Nice. Thank you, William Conlin, for keeping the vintage apes alive. All right, ape fans, you only have a little while to help support and fully fund Making Apes, and the Indiegogo campaign ends on May the 20th. They pushed it up from May the 5th to May the 20th because they've been getting a lot of great support lately, and that figure is just rising and rising every day. And currently, they're at 21,000, and his flexible goal is 25,000, so they're almost at the finish line. So come on, ape fans, they're almost there. All you need to do is go to Indiegogo.com with a credit card in hand, and you can help fully fund this documentary that really highlights all of the makeup artists.
Now, the one thing that I did want to highlight about this discussion that we had with William, and, we talked about this actually in the discussion, was that until we saw the trailer that day at Monsterpalooza, I had no idea that they got Guillermo del Toro in the documentary.
Yeah, that was a big surprise.
So you didn't know either?
No idea.
so this trailer got me even more excited because not only do they have Guillermo del Toro, but they also had Richard Donner, who I didn't expect to see in this documentary. And then just the amount of people that were appearing in this trailer they were showing, it's like, oh my God, this is like the who's who of Hollywood. And I just so cannot wait until this thing comes out. And showing that trailer at Monsterpalooza was really, really a good move for them, because how could you not be excited after seeing some of those people that were in it?
Well, if everything goes the way it's planned, then we'll be seeing Making Apes come this September 2018. And then the DVDs and Blu-rays will be rolling out, like he said, next spring. So at the next Monsterpalooza, maybe there'll be a screening of Making Apes.
Oh, that would be fun.
All in all, a great Monsterpalooza, and I can't wait to see what Monsterpalooza 2019 brings us.
I go every year, and I got to tell you something. It is one of my favorite. What would you call it? Con?
Convention. It's a convention.
Okay, convention. It is one of my favorite conventions.
It's a palooza. It's a palooza that celebrates monsters.
Well, then I guess it's one of my favorite paloozas. I love going every year, but next year I hope they have that Jaws, because I really got to get into that museum and see it.
You know, honestly, whenever I go to conventions, there's so many actors and stars there that I want to talk to, but I don't want to give them false hope by letting them think that I'm going to get an autograph, because I'm not an autograph person. But now, because of the podcast, we can walk up to anybody and get a couple of sound bites, and we get a chance to meet them.
I don't know. There were a couple of tables there where when I looked at the prices,
yeah,
it was kind of like, no, I bet you they're going to ask for money. And I did have an experience with someone where they charged me for an autograph, and when I asked for a picture, they said $20 more. Who charges more for the picture?
Yeah.
And that's why that person had no line through most of the day.
Good.
Matter of fact, we saw another person there that was charging, like, I don't know, was she charging like $40 for her autograph? I won't say who. And I wanted to get this autograph for my wife, but when I saw that price, I was kind of like shaking my head, and I don't think I saw a single person at her table the whole entire time.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's funny to see their pricing menu with autograph this much, picture this much, selfie $10. $10 for a selfie? Come on.
Well, that's what I liked about Douglas Bradley's booth, and he was the one who played Pinhead, is right there where it says the price for the autograph. It says free picture with autograph.
That's the way it should be.
Right. Well, that's how you prove that it's an actual autograph,
right,
is you show people the picture of you with the person.
I couldn't agree more. All right, Mark, now let's wrap things up with Listen to the Apes, because we got a couple of Facebook messages we want to read off. And then we're going to roll into our special reunion that we got with, let's say, Bobby Porter and somebody else.
So our first Facebook message comes from Gavin Haig. And Gavin writes, "Hello there from northeast of England.
Wow.
Just wanted to say I love the podcast. I've listened to 15 of them over the last 3 weeks. I'm new to podcasts and only listened to my first within the last month. I, of course, have been a massive Planet of the Apes fan since the mid-'70s, especially the TV series. I'm on the group and also now follow you on Twitter. Any other ways? Thanks." There are so many things that I love about this Facebook message. First of all, he's from Northeast England. He says, "I love the podcast." He's listened to 15 of them in 3 weeks.
Oh, that's 5 a week.
He's new to podcasts. He's only listened within the last month, and he chose ours as one of his first. And he's a big fan of the TV series. He says, especially the TV series.
Right on.
So I like Gavin Haig.
Yeah, he writes that he follows us on Twitter, and unfortunately, we don't do all that much on Twitter. What you want to do is go to our Facebook page, and that's where you see everything. Lately, we've been going to the USC Visions and Voices programs, and we've been recording all the panels, and all of those are posted up there. Angela Rushmere posts a lot of rare pictures, which I still don't know where she gets them. And we're linking to other panels and stuff from Making Apes. So if you really want to stay in tune with what's going on with Talking Apes and just the vintage ape fan community, you must go to our Facebook page.
All right, so do you want to read the next message?
Yeah, our next message comes from Al Gross. And he begins with, hey, hey. I love that. You know what? I've been out to conventions or at Disneyland, and people will come over and say, hey, hey. I love that. All right.
The weird thing is most people don't know that where you got that from, it is actually, hey, hey, hey.
From What's Happening. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey.
Right. You just readjusted it for yourself.
Yeah, it works better with a monkeys reference. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. Hey, hey, we're the apes. But hey.
Oh, I never even put that together. How do I not put that together?
Hey, hey, we're the monkeys?
Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. And people say we're monkeying around.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
You're a huge Monkees fan. How did I not get that? Oh, man.
All right. Now, Al Gross, he says, thanks for turning me on to the old Galen rap. This is the Galen wraparound videos that were broadcast on some independent channel back in the 70s when they reran the classic Planet of the Apes TV series. And now Al goes on, I'm a huge ape fan, but somehow I'd missed that, referring to the old Galen wraparounds. It's even better with multiple viewings. He's working on his final project through each installment. Once you know what he's doing, it's fun to see the pieces along the way. Thanks again, Al Gross. Well, thank you very much, Al Gross. Those are really, really fun. And you know what? I never knew those existed either until we did our live action series wrap up. And I was on the internet researching and these came up. Wow, mind blown.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Galen. Now, I'm so glad you could join me today. It is a marvelous story you're going to see. I remember this as it was yesterday. Your spaceship shooting out of the heavens. Oh, what a shock it must have been to discover what the world had come to. What a shock it was for me, too. Heavens knows. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let us go back and see what it was like. Back to the Planet of the Apes.
All right, all ape fans, we encourage you to write into us too. Just go over there to our Facebook page and drop us a line. Let us know what you think of the podcast and if you have any questions. That about does it for this episode of Talking Apes. Give us a few minutes and we're going to roll into our reunion interview. We want to give a huge thanks to the Making Apes crew, and once again, go over there to Indiegogo.com and please contribute. And we want to thank the director, William Conlin, Tom Burman, who is the executive producer of Making Apes and makeup legend, Bobby Porter, Lou Wagner, David Naughton, the LA Ape City cosplayers, and our special guest, which we'll be rolling into in just a matter of minutes. And join us on the next episode. Mark my words, this next episode, we're going to give the ape fans out there highlights of USC's 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes.
And if we postpone it again, this time, you're going to break the news to them.
All right, deal. Well, you know what? There's so much vintage ape stuff coming along, so don't blame me. Blame the 50th anniversary. Now, for more vintage apes news and stories, go to Simeon Scrolls at pota.goatley. That's GOATLEY.com and theforbiddenzone.net. We also want to give a huge thanks to Angela Rushmere, who's been doing so much great work on our Facebook page. And we want to thank Rob Dellinger for composing our opening jingle. And of course, I want to thank my sweetie wife, Sarah, for posting the show every single episode. Now, ape fans, we want you to go over there to Apple Podcasts and please review us. We would really, really appreciate that. Oh, hey, Mark, we got a new review over there. We got 5 stars from AU83, who headlines the review, Beware the Beast Man. Then he goes on, great for ape fans and a great look at an underappreciated series. Well, thank you very much, AU83.
I love those 5-star reviews.
Yes. Now, we're not going to tell you to leave a 5-star review. You leave how many stars you want. Be honest. Now, Mark, a lot of the ape fans have told us they had found us over there at Apple Podcasts, and they just typed in Planet of the Apes, and our name comes right up. So please review us so more ape fans can find us. And if you want to email us, you can go right ahead at apestv@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. You can tweet at us at Talking Apes TV. And once again, go over there and like us if you haven't already at facebook.com/Talking facebook.com/TalkingApesTV. If you haven't already, please join me and my wife Sarah on our Star Wars Disney podcast, Skywalking Through Neverland, at skywalkingthroughneverland.com and retrozap.com. So until next time, this is Richard.
This is Mark.
And we'll see you next time on Talking Apes. Now, everyone, listen to the bloopers. Then we're going to roll into our reunion meeting with Bobby Porter and Scott Schwartz. What did they work on together? They worked on the 1982 film The Toy, which also starred Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. This was the first time these two had seen each other since shooting The Toy back in 1982. So it was really fun to see these two just recount old memories and go back to stories that, well, got each other in very big trouble.
And we know that, well, this doesn't really have to do with Planet of the Apes, but if you saw how Bobby Porter reacted when he had this reunion with Scott Schwartz, because he wasn't expecting it at all. He didn't know that Scott Schwartz was coming. We just had to turn our mics on, the two of them, and we just had to get this interview. And then when we were done, it's like, I bet you there's listeners that we have on Talking Apes that would love to hear this.
Well, I know I was really excited because I really love this film, and wow.
You were extra excited because you're a big fan of The Toy.
Yeah, so this was really exciting to me, so hopefully it'll be exciting to you. And I'm sure you ape fans will also recognize the name Scott Schwartz from A Christmas Story, where he played the character Flick, but I'm sure you know him better as the kid who gets his tongue stuck on the metal flagpole after a dare. Alright, first bloopers, then the reunion. Have fun, and we'll see you next time.
I better hear some Richard bloopers in there.
Nope. No bloopers at all. Fade out. No! And the book goes into the history of Rod Serling's script to the Mort Abrahams adaptation.
It's Mort.
What did I say?
You said more.
Oh. To the Mort Abrahams adaptation and to the Ben Nye's makeup tests. Oh, why can't I read this? What's his name? The guy who did the...
Oh my God. Chambers.
No, the guy who was in the ape makeup during the tests.
Oh, I don't know. Tom Burman mentions him, though, I think, in his interview.
Bruh.
We were in the room waiting for the Talking Apes.
Making Apes.
Talking Apes. Remember, we were in the room.
And don't forget that Bobby Porter also played the character Flick in A Christmas Story. Or you probably know him as the kid who gets his tongue stuck on the metal pole.
Scott Schwartz. You said Bobby Porter.
Oh, damn
it. Right. Making you wonder, is Making Apes real? Is Making Apes the truth? Because if there were... Did they actually put makeup on these people? No, screw that. It didn't work again. And I know that's going in the blooper reel. Then it says one of the highlights was talking with...
Above that?
Ape City cosplayers with Bobby Porter.
Above that?
Oh, dummy. Dummy me, not dummy you. And we were now it's me with all the bloopers.
And that'll be going in too.
And we were eventually joined by a very special guest and friend to Talking Apes. And
all right, your way. Now, can you please do it my way?
No, because you're going to put your way in.
No,
that's got to go in the bloopers. Can't wait to see what goes in. And they're all going in. It's just, they go in at the end of the show, or do they go in at the beginning of or at this point in the show?
What do you give the kid who has everything?
Daddy said anything I wanted, anything in the store.
For Eric Bates, it was the only toy in his father's store
I know what I want.
that wasn't for sale.
What you're offering me is not a job, sir. It's an insult, and I'm insulted, and I'm splitting.
Now, Jack Brown has been made an offer he can't refuse.
$10,000?
For that kind of money, if Eric blows his nose, you wipe it.
And if he can survive 1 week with Eric,
Was I bad?
What you were gave a new meaning to the word bad.
He may even find himself a friend.
If you want a friend, you don't buy a friend. You earn a friend.
Richard Pryor, Jackie Gleason, Ned Beatty, and Scott Schwartz in a Richard Donner film, The Toy.
Hey, you guys, you want to know how much fun Monsterpalooza is? My very first job as a stunt coordinator with Jackie Gleason and Richard Pryor, I kept a young man alive who played Jackie Gleason's son, and he's standing right behind me. It's Scott Schwartz. And I haven't seen him since the film in 1982.
Wow. All right, we got a Wonder Wheel if you want to jump in there and recreate that scene.
Talking Apes TV, one of the best podcasts on the planet.
Which has now been rebranded to Talking Apes. Now, this is a huge treat because we have a reunion from The Toy starring Scott Schwartz and Bobby Porter. Hey, guys.
Well, I wasn't starring, I was stunt coordinating. This is the star right here.
Yeah, he was actually my stunt double and my teacher of how to ride a motorcycle and the go-karts and going down the stairs in that cockamamie car.
Wait a minute, wasn't it Scott Schwartz, Bobby Porter, Richard Pryor, Jackie Gleason?
That's how it goes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Something like that. We can't insult them now. They're both gone, so they're not going to get mad at us.
It's how I remember it.
That's right.
Directed by the great Richard Donner.
We had a pretty good lineup of veterans in show business in that movie. And then me, who I didn't have a clue what the hell I was doing, but I was doing it.
One of my greatest films of 1982, one of my favorites. Tell us some behind-the-scenes stories of when you two worked together.
I was like, hey, he's my size. We can go play. We can do something. But he was an adult, you know. So, I mean, I had, there was one other kid on the set, this kid named Davis Hotard, who was my understudy, sort of my stand-in, you know. And that was it. So, I mean, but Bobby was an adult, and he had a job to do, you know. My dad basically said to me, listen, you know, there are guys that you're going to become friendly with. And just pay attention and don't be an idiot, you know, and just don't speak out of turn. And Bobby was always cool about stuff. That's why we had a blast. Between me, him, and Greg, you know, Elam, who was Richard's stunt double, we all had fun.
What was the one thing that you had learned?
Well, Bobby teaching me how to ride the motorcycle, and I kept wanting to ride all over the place, and they wouldn't let me. One day I took the Yamaha 40 or 60, whatever the small bike was, and I actually I rode it to the set behind the guy that was supposed to be driving me. And he's like, don't tell anybody. I went back to the house. It just hit me in the head. I went back to the plantation house and I met the people that own it now and talked to them, and they let me walk. It was fantastic.
Do you remember the snake?
In the front?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a picture of it.
Richard Donner was getting out of his motorhome and almost stepped on, 6 foot, 7 foot water moccasin?
All right, now tell us some stories about working with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason.
Well, Pryor was the best. Let's put it this way. The stuff that he told me at 13 and 14 years old, he'd go to jail for now. I mean, literally, there was no filter. He had no filter. So, I mean, he talked about sex, drugs, booze, whatever, what PA he was shtupping. I mean, I knew everything and had really no idea half the things he was saying because I was pre-puberty. I hadn't done that stuff yet. So I would just agree with him and smile, you know. But I knew what girls were and I knew what boobs were and all that kind of stuff.
Is this the first time you've seen Scott Schwartz since The Toy?
Since 1982. This is the first time we bumped into each other for obvious reasons. I thought the restraining order would cover Monsterpalooza, but apparently not.
So when you first saw him, what was the first memory that came back?
Well, I saw this guy holding a picture up that he wanted me to sign, and I went, okay, just another. Wait a minute, that's me and him. Shut the front door. It was awesome.
What was the one thing that you had learned from Richard Pryor or Jackie Gleason, and Jackie Gleason on that film? What did you learn about the business or life or anything in general?
Too much to explain standing in a show where you have to sit down in a studio. Gleason taught me how to shoot pool. He taught me how to shoot pool in the room right behind the pool area in the house. They had the pool table set up. Now, they don't actually use it in the film, but you see it, but they don't actually do anything. But he taught me how to shoot pool on that table. I mean, Richard taught me about timing and about ad-libbing and discipline and, being prepared. And, they were my teachers. They were my coaches. Richard ended up being my muse and my teacher of a lot of things.
What was the one note that Richard Pryor had given you about comic timing?
Observance and patience. He said if you observe and you're patient, you'll find your niches and how to play off of somebody because you'll figure it out through how they are. But he was the best, man.
At that point, he was known for Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, a lot of R-rated movies. How did he make that leap into doing a kids film? Do you recall anything that he had talked about? What made him do a kids film?
The paycheck. Yeah. He had the 4-picture deal with Columbia, so he had to do a movie. And I mean, they sort of squeezed the toy in before Superman 3, knowing there's no big stunts in the toy for him to do. There's nothing crazy. It's pretty simple. It's a quick in and out, 3 months, which turned into 4 months. And then a month after we finished the film, he went to London and did Superman. But I mean, it's not really a kid's movie. There's not him sitting in that fakakta boxing thing. I mean, that's not really kids, Yeah, it's PG.
I just saw it not too long ago, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this should be rated R. It really should be. But at the time, it was very kid-friendly.
There's no vulgarity, and there's no nudity, and there's nothing that's really that bad. We see worse on television.
Well, very much so. We've seen the scenes between Jackie Gleason and Teresa Ganzel, and those go over the top for a PG film.
Even if you want to go PG-13, there's no reason for an R. It wouldn't make any sense. The stuff that you didn't see would be R, because that's when Teresa's boobs would come out of the dress and whatever, all the other things. I see her too. I talk to Teresa all the time.
All right, how about Christmas Story, the perennial favorite Christmas movie of all time? What was it like doing this film?
Pain in the ass.
Also,
I spent 4 months with Bobby in Louisiana, 90 degrees. I spent 2 months in Tucson doing another film called Kid Cow, 85 degrees. 2 months in St. Catharines, Toronto, and Cleveland, Ohio. 20 degrees below zero. 20 degrees above zero. That was it. The highest it ever got was like 25 above in Cleveland, and the tongue scene is 25 below in St. Catharines. There's no fun there. There's no fun there. If not for the other kids, if it was a one-man band like The Toy, I'd have been in trouble. It would have been horrifying. I couldn't leave the hotel.
And this was right after The Toy, so what did you take from...
Then Kid Co., then Christmas Story. I mean, it's literally 3 in a year. I finished The Toy, okay? And it was going to open December 10th. And I booked Kid Co., and we're shooting in Tucson. They were going to have a 10-week shooting schedule, which would have run till like December 22nd. And we had the reading, and me and Dad are sitting there with Frank Yablons, David Niven Jr., Ron Maxwell, the director, the first AD, whatever. And I said to them, can I talk to you guys? Right, So we finished the table reading, and everybody else leaves but them and my dad and me. And I said, listen, the shooting schedule doesn't work for me. The Toy opens December 10th. I got to be out of here. I got to do promo. They threw me out of the room. They're talking to my dad. They're like, okay, your kid is our lead. Movies don't get made faster. They get made slower. So should we replace him now? If we're going to have a problem, we'll just replace him. And my dad goes, listen, he just got done doing 4 months with Gleason and Pryor and Richard Donner and Ray Stark. He's Secretariat right now. Get on his back and ride him, and he will take you to the finish line. And they're like, you really? Okay, fine. So they call me back in. I come back in, and they said, well, okay, you want to make this go? You want to make the process shorter? What's the first thing you want to do? I'm 14 years old. And I looked at them, and I go, well, I'd like to talk to Alan about the shooting schedule. Maybe we can move some things around. There's no 14-year-old that says that. They didn't expect that. Well, they said, okay. Alan came over, the first AD. We sat down. They all left. And we sat there for 3 hours and broke down the shooting schedule. And we actually finished the film. We finished The Toy Kid Co. on December 10th. We finished 12 days early.
Really?
Yeah. I saved them about $1.5 million, $1.8 million off the budget. I didn't get a bonus, but I got, hey, thanks, that was nice. That's what I got.
So was this your first step into being a producer?
It wasn't about being a producer. It was like, hey, I got to get the hell out of here. Let's go, move it along.
That was more the motivation.
Yeah. My motivation was because of the promo stuff for The Toy, and and it just happened that way.
How is it working with Bob Clark? Because it's very strange for me to think this is the guy who made Black Christmas, Porky's, and then A Christmas Story.
He's a labor of love. He loved Gene Shepard. He loved the idea of Christmas Story. And he didn't care what kind of films he made. He really didn't. He could shoot anything.
He was somebody who shot like all sorts of different kinds of movies because he also did the Baby Geniuses movies. So he went from like nudie movies, horror movies,
teeny, late teen Porky's to Kid Christmas Story to Baby but he was all over the place. But he was easy for me because he didn't care. I had 15 lines. That's all I had scripted was 15 lines. I worked 6 weeks.
Okay, by the way, my favorite Christmas film of all time.
Prancer.
Well, besides It's a Wonderful Life.
But that's not really a Christmas movie.
Whatever.
Prancer.
Hey, I've got the mic. Is A Christmas Story. Because I wanted that BB gun so badly. And seeing Scotty's tongue attached to that little bar, the pole, laughed my arse off. Hey, I got to go back to work. We're here selling the documentary. So I'm going to take off.
All right, well, thank you very much. Once again, huge fan of the toy, love Christmas Story, and I used to watch Kidco on cable all the time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
I'm saying hello to a
Talking Apes.
Hello, I'm Dr. Zayas from the Planet of the Apes, of course. My favorite podcast to listen to is Talking Apes, even though it's hosted by filthy humans.